music lovers, and welcome along to episode 12 of The Music Gaga. I'm your host, Ben Hockings, and tonight this is the part 5 and final part of my series on streaming. So be sure to listen to our previous episodes to catch up on what has been discussed, but if you can't be bothered, then tonight I'll do a quick recap anyway of what I've covered in past episodes. But before we get stuck into this final episode on streaming for now, I'd like to talk to you quickly about some updates in the world of music and I guess copyright in general over the past few days. And these are topics that I've continued to keep an eye on through the last few episodes of this series. So hopefully those of you who have been listening in will I guess kind of catch up on what's been happening, and if you haven't, then I'll do a quick update anyway on why this has been so important to this podcast, these topics I mean. So first of all, an update on the Internet Archive and its current issues with its emergency, I say emergency in inverted commas, online book library. For those of you who are aware, and those of you who aren't, obviously, the Internet Archive at sort of the beginning of the coronavirus breakout released 1.4 or more than 1.4 million books as available for hire for free through their online library. This is, on the face of it, sounds like a very noble cause, and I guess the intent is pretty sincere. Unfortunately, how they've obtained these, and these are books that range from anything from from study books to recreational reading to manuals and all kinds of things. How they obtain these books is in question, and how they distribute these books, secondly, as well, is also a very contentious issue right now, with authors and other publishers, physical book publishers, saying that these ebooks have been obtained illegally and are being distributed illegally, basically denying authors their correct royalties. And 1.4 million books obviously is no small number, so it's quite a major issue. And the update this week is that a number of major US book publishers have launched an infringement suit against Internet Archive in regards to their release of these books on through their emergency library. It's called emergency because in the past, normally they would hire books out, ebooks, as a one-for-one. So if they have one, in their archive, then they can hire that one book out at a time. Whereas they've released all these books for unlimited hire now, trying to justify it by saying that, well, the pandemic has closed down physical libraries and access to books, so they're trying to do their bit in making these books available. Unfortunately, myself personally, and obviously many others, do not believe that the ends justify the means, and this is what's come about now. So the current standing is that this lawsuit's been launched, and I will keep you up to date on anything that happens with that. Again, those who aren't quite sure, the link between music and ebooks, the whole issue is to do with copyright. Anything that's found to set a precedent in, say, with authors, has a very high possibility of becoming, or transferring to be a problem for other creatives such as songwriters. So hence, I will keep an eye on this for you all. Secondly, the next update is on the Broken Record, so the hashtag Broken Record on Twitter, and which is also sort of run concurrently with the Keep Music Alive petition over there in the UK. The Broken Record hashtag was started by partly by Tom Gray, formerly of the band Gomez, in order to bring to light and the public eye the issues that songwriters and singers and bands are having with the current royalty system. And the Keep Music Alive petition is along those lines as well, and that so far has garnered over 13,000 signatures, and that's going to go to the relevant politicians in the UK to again highlight the plight of musicians, especially in the COVID-19 era, but also the issues that they have in the current system as it is. The pandemic is really just sort of brought to the fore spotlighted these issues that they've been having with the current system. So, and especially now with the emergence of the Black Lives Matter movement in the last 2 weeks or so. This is the broken record. Keep Music Alive campaigns have been a really good way to also bring this BLM issue into the spotlight in regards to music. And as a suggestion by Tom Gray on Twitter, that major labels, so such as the big three, Sony, Warner, and Universal, should cancel any unrecouped debts from foundation artists as a moral recompense for black artists. So when we say foundation artists, we're talking about obviously artists who help build these labels in the very, very early days. And in the very, very early days, a lot, if not the majority of the music came from black artists. And the contracts that they had to sign back then to join these labels, they're unbelievably still being paid off today, and that's just not acceptable by any standard. So rather than this lip service that many of them been paying, these labels have been paying on social media platforms, we want to see some actual change. And Tom Gray has suggested that they write off these debts owed by these foundation artists, in recognition of the contribution they've made to music to get it where it is now, which I think is a totally acceptable request. So let's hope that is, or something more comes of that. The DMCA hearing, so the Digital Millennium Copyright Act hearing over there in the US is currently underway. The DMCA, for those of you who aren't aware, is the Foundation Act in many respects to the internet as it is today. And that was put into effect in 1996, I reckon it was. But as you can sort of imagine, 24 years is a very long time in the internet world, and the DMCA is being reviewed as it's sort of become very old and skewed towards the bigger end of town rather than the smaller artists and the grassroots creatives that help create the big end of town. The hearing part 2 had just been concluded a few days ago on talking about the DMCA takedowns. So a takedown is basically when you, as a creative, find that someone has used your music on a platform, say YouTube, for example, illegally without any consent from you. You issue a takedown to YouTube to have this video taken down. That's the gist of it. It's a very cumbersome process now with the amount of videos being uploaded to YouTube, for example. Every minute it's hundreds of hours every minute, so it's just not humanly possible to keep control of that. So they had Don Henley, formerly of the Eagles, for those of you who aren't aware, give his opinion on the DMCA and the takedown process. And he mentioned in his part of the hearing that he was subjected to a bit of a smear campaign, apparently by papers that were owned by Jeff Bezos, for those of you who was the owner of Amazon and who owns like $1 billion. So I just, inside me, I was a little bit angry that, someone would, like, I know Don's not a perfect man himself, by all accounts. I don't know him. I'm not perfect myself, so let's just put that out there as well. But the fact that an anti-copyright stance would be taken, by a big tech-owned newspaper or two, and the intent was to try and intimidate Henley from speaking at this DMCA hearing. That's just reeks of that whole power and arrogance thing. And to his credit, Henley obviously kept his word and still came to the hearing and gave his piece, so in support of artists and copyright. Now, as a bit of a side note to that, and coincidentally, inverted commas again, I was just reading just earlier today that Twitch, which I've never really sort of heard of up until today, but is apparently it's a massively popular video live streaming service, and coincidentally owned by Amazon. There you go. Have just been hit with a whole bunch of DMCA takedowns. It's made, if you Google it, if you just Google Twitch DMCA, you'll see what's been happening. A flood of takedowns have come in just the last few days against streamers who've been using music as their background provided by Twitch for their videos. They've now been asked to take many of these videos down, saying that these violated copyright because the owners didn't give permission for these videos to be used by Twitch. And so that's not really a surprising development when you consider who owns Amazon. And also in the same vein, TikTok is in a very similar position where it's estimated by experts that more than 50% of the music publishing market, basically the big three labels, was unlicensed with TikTok. So I know the Universal artists like Taylor Swift, their music, as far as I know, hasn't been licensed to be used on TikTok, and they're subjected to a lot of scrutiny right now with what they're doing. So, just once again, on the face of it, where there's a bit of smoke in terms of these companies allowing music to be used, and then TikTok and Twitch and all that seems fun, and it's it's a really great hobby, and and I'm sure it's serious for many people. I mean, Old Town Road was that song by Little Nas, and Billy Ray was discovered in a roundabout way from TikTok. So the thing is, you just can't trust that these companies have their house in order. So just please do your research. If you care about copyright, please do your research into these before you start using them. All right, that's the DMCA hearing done. Now, Warner Music Group last week launched their IPO, which is their initial public offering. So they put themselves on the NASDAQ stock market over there in the US. And basically, on the first day, they closed, they had the initial opening price. It was about $24 or something like that. And then they closed that first day 20% up. So they made a nice, tidy $2.5 billion. So that's not a bad return. And you can look at this from two angles, I suppose. The first is that when you know that the money doesn't actually go to Warner Music Group, but it goes to the owner, Len Blavatnik. So you have to question whether is that going to flow down to the artist? Is it going to be invested back into the company? Who knows what's going to happen with that? So you could look at it critically like that, or you could also actually think, wow, like that's $2.5 billion that they've made on that first day. Somebody out there thinks that the music business actually has something worth investing in. So this is like me talking about Spotify a couple episodes ago about they bought into they paid $100 million for Joe Rogan's podcast. Again, it's a bit of a I guess validation that there is money to be made in music, and people do still see that value. So I think I'm going to be a bit of an optimist in this case and actually think that is a good thing that Warner made that much money. Let's just hope that they do the right thing with that money. So thank you to streaming really has instilled that confidence in the market. let's just hope it keeps on going. And we should also, I should mention too, that Warner did all on the same day launch a $100 million social justice fund in this Black Lives Matter environment. When I say environment, this should be ongoing all the time. But they've stepped up and put some money up for that too. So that's a great start. All right, how are we going here for time? Oh yeah, I'll probably better get a wriggle on, hey? And finally, just a quick mention about my uploads this week. As you know, I quite enjoy my downloading music from iTunes, especially, or going out and buying some vinyl from my secondhand store around the corner here. There's a song I've been looking for ages on iTunes. You might know that Lord remix, Tennis Court by Flume. I've been looking for it for, goodness knows, 2 or 3 years or so. Anyway, I Googled it for some reason this week, trying to find it still on iTunes. And on Google, it came up that this song is actually available under somebody else's name and spelt differently as well. So you can actually buy, you can find Tennis Court if you type in tennis as regular spelling, Tennis, but spelled court, Courte, and it comes up. Not under Flume or Lord though. It's the exact same song, but sold by a different artist. So I don't know how that works. Has that been pinched, or is there some agreement that this artist has with Flume to sell it under a different name? I don't know. That's a question maybe for one of you guys out there to answer for me. And Pauline Henry finally is on iTunes. I've been looking for Pauline again for a few years, especially her cover of the Roberta Flack song "Feel Like Making Love." The original version is slow, very romantic, whereas Pauline's cover is a very rock, passion in a different way, kind of passion, version, and I loved it. So Pauline, thanks for finally coming onto iTunes. I've got that song now. Ben's happy. Okay, kids, let's go over to this episode's main topic, which is the streaming thread, and today's the final part 5, and on the consumer. So you and I, and what you and I can do to make sure that we maybe maximize artists and songwriters' return on their music, but also influence industry decision on where we want our money to go. So if we can show that we actually do want to do the right thing, by these artists, the industry might change in reflection of that. So who knows? He's hoping anyway, hey? All right, so you and I, basically, as consumers of music, is where the money starts, and stops probably in a lot of respects as well. You and I are the ones who influence business. So take, for example, piracy. So actually, let's go further back than that. 1999, the golden year of the industry, where revenue was at $20 billion plus. It was the peak year for music, because you and I were going out and buying CDs, and vinyl, I guess, wasn't making its big comeback at that stage, but CDs especially. And then MP3 came along, and digital compression of music, like high quality music, came along, and then you and I suddenly decided that we wanted to go and pirate music because it was free and it was easy. We just didn't have to leave our house to do it. So, piracy, we can blame piracy all we want, but the fact is that consumers, and we consumers, if we actually got it for free, who knows? I don't think we can call ourselves consumers if it's for free. Maybe we can, I don't know. But whatever the version might be, we chose to download music for free and damage the music industry. Wow, a bit of a song in that. It's a poem, wasn't it? There we go, I might write that down quickly. No, just kidding, I didn't write it down. So the consumer really is the one to blame for putting, now Napster and LimeWire and whatever could have put any service out there they wanted to that was free for music, but unless you and I used it, it was of no value, right? But unfortunately, we did use it, and it was kind of a initiation of fire into the internet. And how, myself at home, one click, I wouldn't think why one click makes a big difference, but you put my one click to download a song illegally, along with a million other clicks on computers, and all of a sudden you've got a problem, So it was our actions that really almost pirated the industry into the ground. So in some respects, possibly we do owe the industry to get it back up. And fortunately, we've responded. So what piracy did tell the industry was that consumers wanted music accessible, and obviously low price, because you can't get much lower than free, can you really? So they had to come up with a solution that was going to meet that demand. So Rhapsody, I believe, was formed in response to that. Rhapsody was the first major music online database distributor for a monthly fee, and that's kind of what got it all started. Now, for those of you who did hear my last episode about this, personally, I thought, who's going to pay $10 a month to access music that you don't actually own? That just seemed like a ridiculous idea, but obviously I was in the minority. Sorry, excuse me. And here we are. So streaming came along, and consumers, it took a little bit of a while for the head of steam to build up, but then Spotify came in about 2008, and the music industry still took a while to adapt to that streaming model. But then I think 2015 was the industry bottomed out in terms of revenue, whereas now we've had 5 straight years of growth. So the consumer demand has obviously risen. That's what's caused the increase in revenue. It goes without saying. But it just took a while to break that pirating habit. It had quite a flow-on effect for a few years. So do we, as a consumer, do we not care about the industry, or were we uneducated? I would say uneducated, because we just didn't have the foresight, back in the early 2000s to think about the damage that we were causing. And I think in a lot of respects we still don't understand. The general person doesn't understand, and maybe cares even less about it now, because digital makes our life easy. Not just music, but so much of our life is I think my biggest thought about that is paying bills online. Like, if those of you who recall going to the bank or the post office in the 90s, or the motor reg to register your car, it was a nightmare. You have to get there at 9 o'clock in the morning, 8:30 for a 9 o'clock open, and you were still 20th person in line. So to do things from our phones and our computers at home now is amazing, and that's made a lot of things too easy, and we expect life to be a lot like that now. This is the standard now. So, and I did finally open an account with Spotify because because I wanted to have a look at the interface to see what it was like, so I could actually have some sort of background to talk about on these podcasts. But also I wanted to listen to a song that was on Facebook, and I couldn't watch it or listen to it without having Spotify. So it was a cover version of Fading Like a Flower, that Roxette song. It was by a Swedish girl. Wasn't that great, to tell you the truth, but anyway, I had Spotify by then, so it was too late. And I must say, it was a really easy to use, very attractive interface, and that's the whole idea, isn't it? They want you to feel like it's just a button press. That's all you got to do is press one button, and there's a song on your phone, or a stream, or a download, or whatever. And that's where I think a lot of it is on us to be aware about that, because it's like a poker machine. It's you don't really, for those who are addicted to it, don't admit that they're attracted by the lights and the feel and the warmth and how it makes them feel. Like it was quite a pleasurable experience, I must admit, scrolling through the homepage of Spotify. It was really well presented, and so it should be, because they earn $1 billion a year, whatever it is. So I can understand how people would it's like flicking on your through Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whatever. It's just really easy to do. It's thoughtless, and there's no, you don't have to own your action. So you're not publicly, liable for, causing. That's why piracy was so big, because you could do it from your home and no one knew who you were. If you had to go down to the CD store and steal a CD, that's very different, because people can see your face. So that's just how life online is these days. So we have become, conditioned to accept, and in a lot of ways, internet's made our lives much easier. We can do more things in a day because of it. But we just have to be aware of, are you being told what to look at, or are you looking at something by choice, and that can be a very difficult line. So in terms of platforms like Spotify, sure, you can have Spotify curate a playlist for you, but it's their algorithms that are determining your listening habits, right? So you're not actually in charge of your listening experience. You're giving that over to a bigger company. So don't forget, I'm not down on Spotify. I do think Spotify has the right business model, but we just still need to not give them too much rope, if you know what I'm saying. So people like me, and others, there are millions of others out there like myself who want to educate people, because music streaming nowadays is just commonplace, like having breakfast or getting in your car and going to the beach or whatever. It's just part and parcel of our life. So the more habits that we form in listening to Spotify, etc., and if we're not doing it correctly, it's going to give us less and less choice in the future. So you're asking, well, what can I do? If I must listen to Spotify, how do I listen to Spotify correctly? Or what is the best way that I can maximize my experience by listening to music, but also maximizing the dollars that flow through, correctly to the artists and songwriters. So I've already discussed, obviously, streaming in a previous episode, and the labels and how they are involved in all this. But now this is, I've been looking forward to this one, because now I can actually talk to you about how you and I can affect change, or how you and I can just maintain good habits. So, best ways to support your artist or band, songwriter, that kind of thing. If you're going to buy online, scrap that, let's start again. Number one, physical purchase. Physical purchase is still the best way to maximize those dollars to your artist, right? This ensures that money goes to the one you're listening to, or the group you're listening to, or the label you're listening to. Because if you go to, as you would have heard if you listened to my last episode on the platforms, the money goes into a pool. So any song that you listen to on a platform, the money goes into a pool. At the end of the month, or whenever it is, Spotify look at which artists had what proportion of sales for that month, and they divide that pool up accordingly. So, for example, I think I used Drake as the example last time. If Drake, had 5% of all the streams for Spotify for that month, then 5% of all the money that's gone into the pool will go to him and his associated, label and all that kind of thing, publishers, etc. So you could listen to I don't know, whoever, Dua Lipa, or you can listen to old school, whoever, like the Eagles, all month, 2 bands all month on streaming, but 5% of what you listen to is going to go to Drake, even though you never listen to Drake. So physical sales is that way of guaranteeing that money does go, more direct. I know you got to get off your ass and go down to the record store or the CD store if they still exist, and go buy something, order it online. That's fine too. But just do it. And anyway, I can go down the track of you get to hold it in your hand, you can read the insert, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, that's another story. So buy direct, as in physical direct. Number 2, buy direct from the singer and the band, or the band. So go to the website when they have promos on Instagram, which they often do. Buy it direct from them. Then just do whatever you can to cut that middle person out, whether that's any of the platforms. I guess the labels will get a cut still, but they'll get a much lower cut than if you streamed a song, because don't forget, streaming labels get up to 60% or thereabouts of the streaming revenue. Artists get about 20 under a major label. All right, so that's number 2, was direct from the singer and or the band. Number 3, download your music if you can't do any of the first 2. All right, go to iTunes, Apple, all that kind of. I really love the whole download thing because it's so easy to do and quick. Yes, you can't always get the songs you want, but nearly always the song you would want to listen to is on iTunes. Tony Perrin, if you're listening, I want that song Milk out on iTunes at some stage, please. But Tony Perrin notwithstanding, you're going to find many of your, I dare say nearly all of your song choices on iTunes. And in Australia it's $1. It varies between $1.69 to $2.10 for a song. And I can't remember, I think the stats were about you have to stream a song 300 times to give the same return back to an artist as one download. All right? And you're not going to listen to a song that many times because it tops out at about maybe 30 or 40 times, the research says, that you listen to one particular song. So download, it's easier, it's easy, and it's requires, maybe 2 more button pushes, but it's better for your artist in the long run. All right, if you can't download, if you must stream, and streaming is totally acceptable, I'm not saying don't stream, because streaming is a bit of a gateway into downloads. So you might hear a new artist that you quite like, and then you go download their music from iTunes or wherever. So streaming is definitely fine with me, but I would say stream ethically. That is a phrase I've learnt from David Lowery from the Ivers Academy, and I love that phrase, stream ethically. So be aware of what your streaming is doing. So preferably do it from sites with high artist returns, such as Bandcamp, if they have the song on there. Bandcamp have been proven, it's actually without saying now, that they have the higher returns as opposed to other platforms. And they also have what's called Bandcamp Day occasionally, which is where they waive their usual 10 to 15% share of revenues of a stream or a sale, and that money goes direct to the artists themselves then. So they actually redirect that money. Now, when does Spotify or Napster or any of them ever do that? YouTube definitely probably wouldn't do that, even though they make $1 trillion a year. So those kind of gestures are really, they sound maybe tokenistic, but you're talking millions of dollars to artists, in general. So look into which sites have the best returns. Now, don't forget Napster actually has the highest streaming payout rate amongst all the platforms. Spotify, from memory, was about 400% less. So they're about middle of the pack, Spotify, and YouTube is the worst performing payout. But they don't care because they get millions of views, billions of views through their videos anyway. So if you must use YouTube, pay your premium money a month, and that at least will get something, back to the artist in return. So if you can't use a high return site, then use the paid version of that service. All right, so if you're going to stream, pay your $10 a month, and at least something that of value will go to the artist. And as a last resort, streaming free version is the last resort and one that I don't recommend. Because there's no money, it really messes up the payout rate to the artist. It actually drags them down. But also, I don't know, it's not controversial, but just don't be lazy. Make a playlist. Do it the old school way. It's not hard. You can transfer songs over now in a heartbeat to a list. So just do your own list. And if you're going to listen to radio, don't stream radio anything through platforms. Go to actual radio. All right. And I'll tell you why in a second. So there we go. So with the ethically streaming, do it from sites with a high artist return, or use the paid version of the site. As a last resort, use the free version, or don't use it at all. Okay, so moving into the final section now on tonight's part on how the consumer affects streaming and what we can do about it in terms of maximizing profit for the artists. I think it's really important that we are aware of trends and industry strategies. This might sound like a bit, I don't know, too much maybe, a bit over the top. Why should you need to know about what the industry is doing? But I'm really sorry. I had a bit of a cold last week, so I'm getting over it still. So pardon me. But they are relying on you just pressing a button lazily here and there, or scrolling and pressing, or leaving something to play, leaving it playlist to play at random. All right, they want you to do that because that benefits their algorithms, and it strengthens their case if they've got all these listeners, doing this. It really can skew data to how they want it to go. I'm not being conspiracy theorist here. I'm far from it. This is just the reality nowadays with the online age. Every button you press obviously goes into a database. They can see it's well known. They can know your habits. They can know your patterns. They can predict maybe with some certainty what you want to listen to. Hence all the recommended artists you get on your playlists. But it's really important that you make every button click count. All right. So the big tech, amongst other things, and as I discussed before about Amazon and trying to intimidate Don Henley into testifying for copyright, big tech are trying to dilute copyright because it's in their favor, because the more content they can get onto their sites, sorry, pardon me again, because content obviously is king. That still holds true today. The more content they have, it's a lot of leverage they have with advertisers. I guess a lot more. You've got bragging rights, of course, amongst other industry heavyweights, and it costs them less to run their business. Which when they earn, goodness knows, amount of cash that it just boggles the mind, and they're still trying to get out of paying artists. We really need to be aware that that's their strategy, is they're trying to dilute copyright. So the more we can do to enforce copyright and not abuse the system by having music play that is not licensed, the more control we'll get back over them, and more control we give back to the artists and authors, any creative industry. So that's one strategy that we should be aware of. Secondly, I touched upon this in the last streaming episode about Spotify moving into, well, firstly podcasts, which is not so dramatic, but the research is showing that they're looking into getting into radio. Now we can't really let them do this because radio is not it's a different, how they distribute their music is different to how platforms do. Platforms do it by paying less. So again, tight asses, I know that they make their money that way, but it's still, being tight for the sake of it. So Spotify looking to move into radio. So no doubt what Spotify does, the other fish, will look into as well. So if you're listening to radio, in inverted commas, through your site, please consider using regular radio. I don't think they need any more ammo, any more justification to move into radio. So anyway, just be aware of that and keep an eye out on news to do with that. All right, I reckon that covers off the topic of you and I tonight, and hopefully that's given you a few ideas on what you can do to make meaningful change. I know the world is a little bit messed up at the moment, but music still goes on, and it's important that our actions ensures that it goes on to its maximum potential. So just by what I read and how I feel, music is getting much more diluted now. I don't know if any of you've noticed, but it seems like we don't have as much fringe stuff out there. The independents are still doing pretty well, but we certainly get a lot of advertising with the big artists, don't we? Look at Lady Gaga, who I love, and embarrassingly, when she first came out, I thought she was just a fad, and then after 5 years, when I realised she actually was not going anywhere, I decided to go and buy one of her CDs. So, and now I love her. So, but she's just released Chromatica, her latest album, and all you get is bombarded. Twitter does it. I don't know. I can't recall if Facebook having much to do with it, but I don't use Facebook heaps. But certainly the advertising is more pervasive now because they can get to you in more ways, and you seem to notice these bigger labels more. So keep listening to your music, keep searching for it, because it'll be out there, just probably not as advertised, and it's harder to find because you don't go down to the CD store now and flick through the new releases or that kind of thing. Now you go online and the first however many songs might be all the major popular songs right now. So we just need to make sure that we are, not helping to dilute the talent, and we need to make sure that artists and new songwriters and new singers and new bands are encouraged to enter the industry, not discouraged by the lack of money flowing through to artists right now. So our good habits will affect the fortune of other people. That's a lot of what life is like, isn't it, really? So just take care of them. Okay, well that's it for our streaming series. I dare say I'll revisit this topic in the future. There's probably there'll be developments in the industry, no doubt, with the pace that tech changes nowadays. This time next year, something new will be coming along, so it'll be worth talking about, if not sooner. But through all of this, I just encourage you to, because you're listening to this podcast, it must mean you have an interest in music in a lot of respects. Just remember how rich music was and is in your life, and think about what it takes for these people to write these songs and produce them and go out on tour and put their lives behind this thing that they've created. All right, so we need, we need to protect that. We need to make sure that that's encouraged, because that idea from that one person goes out to all of us, and it's a waypoint for us in our lives. So music, we know where we were when we heard this particular song, or I can remember the first film clip I watched was Diana Ross's Chain Reaction. That was the first, or the first song I listened to on a Walkman was Starship. We built this city, So that's how important, how amazing this music thing is. It's infectious in our brains and in our soul. So the least we can do is give back to the community by good habits, by good listening habits and good buying habits. All right, I'll keep it nice and short, that conclusion. Now, thank you so much for your listening. Basically, through this streaming series, I've learnt a lot myself. It's I've said before a few times, I've came in thinking, bloody Spotify and all them, they're jipping the artists, and it's just they're getting shafted by the payout rates. But if you look at the industry as a whole and how it all interacts, and like I have been doing, you realize there's a lot more to the ecosystem than just the platforms, and probably the platforms are third or fourth on the list of culpable entities. All right. So yes, thank you for listening. It's been great. And obviously this podcast is not finished. We're going to talk about other topics in the future. In the next, it'll just be ongoing, obviously, but I'll find a new topic for us to talk about. Some fun stuff, of course. Now, next episode, or it should be the next episode, I'm talking to a very good friend of mine. So I talked to Adrian Tolman from the Terror Adapters last episode. Next episode, another school friend of mine, Sam Madison from WA, who is also a solo artist now. I'll be having her on the show to talk about her experiences in the current climate and what the hope is for the future with the live music industry. So listen out for that, and then otherwise, I reckon I'll have a episode coming up shortly too on our next artist highlight. So a famous or not so famous artist that you might not know, I'll have a bit of insight into their background and how that affected their songwriting. So everyone, have a great couple of days ahead. Thanks for listening. If you're listening in for the first time, please throw me a follow. You can also follow me on Twitter under Real Music Gaga. That's also the same handle as my Instagram account. Or we come across to Facebook and just search for The Music Gaga on Facebook and come and join us there. I've got an exciting regular competition starting up in the next few days, a really fun competition which will focus on your music library. So if you're proud of your music library, whether it's on your phone or physically, vinyl, CD, whatever, I've got a fun competition based around what you might have in your collection. So come and see us on Facebook at the Music Gaga, and you'll see all the details there. And I'll look into doing it through Twitter as well and see how it goes there. So everyone, thank you so much for listening. This is Ben Hockings from the Music Gaga signing out, and I will talk to you again very soon.